Cool. All right. So, time to get started. Thanks for coming on, y'all. Today is going to be a fairly casual session. We definitely want it to be interactive. Like all Tuesday trigger sessions, we don't really have an agenda. Some people do when they come on. Mo's come on before and spoken and had a whole thing to walk through. But today we're going to keep it pretty casual and we're just going to go off the cuff because we've got Felipe from Email Bison, formerly from Instantly. This man has been heavily involved in sequencers since the beginning of time, and so he is a great source of knowledge. Now, I don't want to like choose sides with sequencers, right? Obviously, we use Email Bison personally, and so we made the switch probably 6 months or a year ago. We also still use Instantly and Smartly, right? So I don't want any feelings to be hurt because ultimately you have to go wherever performance is, and sometimes you need to have backups in place, or you need to have other systems in place for different clients, etc. But certainly what we've found with Email Bison, and you can talk about this as well, Felipe, as we get into it, but Email Bison is undoubtedly the most hands-on with their clients. They are the most selective about who they work with intentionally because they're making sure they don't sully their own warm-up pools, etc., to reach like too much of a critical mass, which other sequencers have definitely had that happen in the past 6 months to a year, where their warm-up pools are getting infiltrated by Spamhaus, Serble, all that kind of stuff. And I think that you guys are like just you guys are this lean but mighty team, and quite frankly, you really give a shit about all of the people that you work with, right? And so that's my experience. I would love to hear from you, Felipe, how you would describe your time with Email Bison, what your differentiators are, and just give an intro since I just stole all of your thunder.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here with lots of legends around. Yeah, so yeah, I've been in the outbound space for the past 10 years. I had an agency of my own before. I used to work as a sales rep like 10 years ago. So how I got started with cold email was pretty much, I was given like a list of 10,000 people to cold call 10 years ago. And it was painful. One day, just, by accident, I discovered cold email. And so what I did is just in the golden years where you could blast 2,000 people and get results from a single inbox, I just blast them all. And then I got a bunch of people interested. So I was just calling people that were already warm and they showed interest. And then my manager was like, "Wow, you're like a genius, like you're crushing it." And I wasn't giving my secret formula to anyone. I was like, early in the morning, just call emailing people. And then in the afternoon, like just calls were raining. I mean, like positive calls. And I was like doing my work in like 2 hours. 2 or 3 hours, and I was crushing my quota. And that way I discovered like, okay, this stuff works. So yeah, basically as time went by, I use almost every sequencer you can think of. Yep. And at some point I just joined Instantly from the very early days when the product was very scrappy. We grew it together, improved it. Now it's a massive company. It's more like 40,000 customers and so on. I also had the pleasure of meeting BiHub from Smartly multiple times. So we all get along well. We're all like, we coexist very well. So those are fantastic tools, by the way. Like, don't get me wrong. We're not trying to like compete with them. They're tools for the masses, but I think your definition of how Bison works is very accurate. What we're trying to do is just help the top 10% operators. So we're not trying to like serve the masses like other sequencers are trying to do. We're just focusing on people who are like absolutely conspiracy theorists about like deliverability, and they're trying to build bulletproof systems. Yes. Perfect.
We were talking about it like before the call, and I made this in 2 minutes before the call. So
yes,
we'll definitely be talking about some conspiracy theories here.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, the average Bison customer, like they like to ask a lot of questions and they like to be very careful because they send a lot of emails, right? So if you're sending hundreds of thousands of emails, you just want to make sure that you're not risking your business, because imagine your entire business relying on like these factors that you have no control on. So yeah, we just try to support those that they need like a more personal, approach. So our support is like all one-on-one on Slack and all of that. So yeah, we can talk a little bit more about that, but yeah, I don't want to hard pitch Python too much.
No pitch slapping today, Felipe. Just unbiased opinions. No, but realistically, I think that was a really good summary, right? You guys, we probably ping you guys on chat like probably like 3 times a day, to the point where I'm like, how is this even worthwhile for you guys to have us as Email Bison users? But you guys are incredibly hands-on. And to your point about like V, if anyone's met Vibov, like, dude, he is like the man, right? Like all of these sequencers and all of these groups, we all coexist. V's coming on Tuesday Triggers, I think next week, right? So I don't think that everyone realizes there's going to be more players in the space. And I think one of the things that we're talking about prior to the call is that we're all going to be facing the same challenges no matter what. People might switch sequencers, but these ideas of like blacklists, getting into warm-up pools and fingerprinting who's in those warm-up pools, no one's safe from that, period.
Yeah.
Like that could happen regardless. You guys keep a pretty walled garden, but it could still
Yeah.
happen, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think? I think one of the big things we want to talk about here is like, where do you see the space going in the next 6 months, and how can people start to future-proof themselves against it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't see the space changing much in the next 6 months. It might change gradually. So, I mean, we all are experiencing it, right? Like it's getting harder to inbox. Basically, the spam filters, they're just getting harsher. And the reason is very simple, right? Like nobody likes spam. We don't like spam. I don't like receiving spam. And with spam, I mean like an email that is completely irrelevant. Like it makes no sense to me. Like sometimes some people send me cold emails that they don't even like say my first name right, and I immediately know they just scraped that database from God knows where, and yeah, they're just blasting it off, right? And look, we're seeing some signals where, and I had a meeting with Google once about it, and I can talk about it, but basically Apple is summarizing emails. Now Google is doing the same. So that means that they're trying to reduce the noise that we're seeing from emails, and they're trying to make sure that the relevance is the most important factors when sending cold emails, right? So I think that's going to start getting harsher and harsher, where we will have AI filtering emails even in just a better way. So what they're trying to do is people just sending more relevant emails to the right people, and that should inbox, right? So that I will say it's going to be more and more evident in the next year to 2 years. So I will say in the next 6 months, we're not going to see like a massive change. And I think we all felt like a squeeze in terms of volume, like how many emails you can send per mailbox and domain. Like before, it used to be like, I don't know, like 40 or 50. Like 5 years ago, it used to be like 1,000. So they're definitely squeezing, but I don't think that it's going to get to a point where it's going to be like, I don't know, 5 emails per email account, right? Or 2 emails per email account. I think we're kind of there in terms of volumes per inbox. And like I said, when I met with Google, I once had the pleasure of meeting with them. I asked them very directly, like, are you guys trying to prevent like cold email as a whole? And they were very honest. And they said, like, look, we do send cold emails. Like our team, in order to sell, our products, they do send cold emails. We have a sales team as well, right? So no, we don't want to like shoot ourselves on the leg, but we are trying to prevent irrelevant emails and spam and phishing emails. And actually, Google has a team that is very small and close knit. I didn't know this until I met with those guys, but it's a very small team, and they are busy with phishing attacks, especially at a sort of like global level, like sort of like, I don't know, Russia attacking, I don't know, the US and that type of like attacks, like so on a more like government level. So they're busy with those things. So when it comes to outbound, for them, it's not really that much of a priority. So I wouldn't be so worried about it. But they are against spam for sure, but not against outbound as a whole.
Yeah, I'm targeting.
I'm gonna hit up. Let's see the first question. Let's see. Make sure you're muted,
There's so
y'all.
many questions I should ask myself and to ask the client.
All right, let's make sure we mute ourselves. All right, cool. So next question, someone had just dropped in the chat. We'll answer a question, and then I want to jump into some practical advice, and maybe you can bring up some of the things that you had mentioned previously. But someone said I came here to, or sorry, they said they believe their problem can be copywriting fingerprint. Also, they heard warmy.io might be better in terms of warmth than instantly. So maybe you can talk about fingerprinting in terms of copywriting, because
Yeah.
I don't know that much about that. We just spin tax heavily, and I don't even know if that's like the right way anymore, because people talk about warming up copy fingerprinting and all that stuff. And then maybe you can talk about warm up pools and how they differ.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great topics. So look, spin tags, or basically saying the same thing but in a different way, which is synonyms and such. It used to work pretty well like over the past years, but as AI is getting better and better for the email providers, they're basically catching up, and spin tags is just not as effective as it used to be. And so what we're seeing is fingerprinting on a more macro level. So that means the providers are able to like now see patterns in terms of copy. So they are making sure that your copy is not repetitive, and that's why like they're able to flag spin tags, right? Because they're seeing patterns there. And I have like a personal case I was sharing in the WhatsApp community, by the way, great community. And once I was sending a campaign like a couple of years ago, and my emails were suddenly landing in the spam folder, right? And I was like, why is this happening? Like, I tried different things. I bought new mailboxes, like switch sequencers. I did a bunch of changes and nothing. I was like, what? Why is this happening, right? Then, I started changing things in the copy. And when I changed the phone number, I started to inbox finally. And then I realized that my phone number was fingerprinted. So I just changed the phone number in the signature. I usually like to include the phone number because it creates a sense of like sort of like it's a real email, right? Like it's a person actually sending you an email, and I put my address sometimes in there. Right, or I try to like make sure the signature looks like very human, because a lot of cold emails are just like first name, last name, and company name, and that's about it. So I try to make it feel like more professional in a way. So yeah, the phone number got fingerprinted. I switch it, and boom, I started inboxing. So it's kind of funny how fingerprinting can work. So that's why I usually recommend people like every now and then, like just try to change the copy, A/B test it, see if a fresher copy is gonna work better. And this is like good news for a lot of the agency owners out there, right? Like a lot of you guys, you own your agencies. Like often I talk to people that they are like, oh, I work with this one agency and everything is working well. So we're just going to copy everything they're doing. And, we're just going to save or retainer or $5,000-$10,000 a month retainer. And, it's going to be great. Right. And I tell them, well, I don't think so, man. I think if you know what you're doing, sure, it's going to work, but you're going to just use the same copy for a full year. It's going to burn. And then literally like a few months later, the same people, like they will email me or message me and they will be like, oh, do you know an agency that can help us fix our campaigns? Like we're landing in the spam folder, right? And literally it's just like that. Like I think agencies do a fantastic job just either using Clay or Octave or whichever tool to like generate new copies for every prospect or whatever it is. But it's basically like you have to be constantly like making sure you don't get flag or fingerprinted. And the fingerprinting we have seen on Bison as well. Like for example, Taylor Harron the other day, he was I think he made a video about it, but he was talking that he even once changed his like he used a different name, right, from one of his team members, or I can't remember what it was, but he was sending like a bunch of emails as, let's say, John Smith, right? And then after a while, the deliverability started to dip. And then he sent exactly the same copy with the same infrastructure and same everything, but he used a different set of names. He even changed the names for every email account, and he started inboxing much better. So yeah, you can even get fingerprinted on that like sort of like first name, last name level. So it can happen on many levels.
Yeah, we're doing like for my outbound campaigns, well, like half the people in here have somehow gotten an email from my outbound campaigns, but like, Chris Oland, C Oland, Christian O, that type of thing. So that's some good insight. What are you seeing? So for me, like all of my Google info blew up on the day we met, actually, September 16th. So I don't know if that's a coincidence, seems odd, but a lot of people had their info blow up in the middle of September, and it seems like Google's making passes every couple of weeks on some of the EDU and nonprofit stuff. So a lot of people have switched over to SMTP and Microsoft lately. What are some advice that people can use maybe on if they're using SMTP or Microsoft and how things are different? Do you have anything that you might be able to share?
Yeah, I mean, look, the top 10% operators, which is like the average Bison customer, right? Like, and we do have a call with every single person that wants to use Bison, and sometimes we get pretty annoying. We go very deep into like trying to understand if they know what they're doing before they join our warm-up pool and before they use Bison. And by the way, we had some like funny situations where some people use deep fakes on the calls just to try to join Bison. Literally, I had one yesterday where somebody was using like a fake face, and I asked the guy, "Hey, can you just cover your face with your hand?" And it was a deep fake. It was messed up, and they were using like a fake LinkedIn profile and a fake company. I don't know if it's like a competitor trying to infiltrate a warm-up pool or what, but I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Crazy.
Yeah. All in all, I will say that the top 10% operators, they are diversifying. It's a little bit like investments, right? Like you don't go all in and buy just Tesla shares or all in buy Bitcoin. Like you usually try to buy a bit of everything because you never know when something's going to blow up. So what we're seeing is people are buying 50 to 70% of Google, and then the remaining 50 to 30% between Microsoft and SNTP accounts, right? So I think, a diversity is very healthy. Like just going all in on a single provider, it can be a little bit risky. I think like what happened with panels, like it's a good example. And I wouldn't be so worried about look, we have to understand that Google makes money selling email accounts, right? So if we're using like EDU panels or legacy panels, we're pretty much using their services for free. So it's a matter of time before they started like nuking some of those accounts. So I think as long as you're paying for their services, you should be somewhat fine. But yeah, overall, like just keep testing different infrastructure providers. I think that's something that will never change. We've seen in the past, like some companies claiming like no warm up, like some infrastructure providers that were like, oh, no warm up, you can use it from day one. And today they don't exist, right? So it's like there are a lot of providers out there that they promise like magical results, but at the end of the day, with infrastructure, it's just hard to tell. You just have to be diversifying it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, look, you got to be really careful too. Diversify, but even us with Microsoft, right? Like everyone buys the 25 or 50 or 49 or 99 Microsoft stuff. I'm seeing some changes being announced by Microsoft that those could even be impacted in the next couple months. They're trying to start keeping a closer eye on that stuff as well. So I think everyone's aware of what's going on, and it like behooves anyone to diversify. We always used primarily like bare metal email as a backup with SMTP, and there's some other providers for SMTP that are pretty good. But again, we see big differences in performance between like it's probably like Google, Microsoft SMTP right now for us, but God knows I could be doing something wrong and my Microsoft stuff could be fingerprinted for all I know. So just some advice for anyone out there. That being said, would love for you, I know there was some things that you were thinking about sharing, maybe some practical examples, some advice, anything you'd like to share on that front, that would be great.
Yeah. Look, I think like actually I'm gonna share something that might be very interesting for some of you out there because sometimes like when people are talking in the emailing space it's kind of repetitive, but I want to share what the top 10% Bison operators are doing. And I'm gonna give some credits here to Ryan Dole. For those of you that don't know him, he's a fantastic operator. He's always posting some very interesting stuff on LinkedIn and such. He's the co-founder of Sales.co. It's a large agency. I think they have like more than 200 customers, but they are massive. With his partner Jake Greenfield. And he made this analysis, which this is the kind of stuff I love. Data driven, no BS, not like I heard, I think, I feel. No, this is like data driven. I took 1 million emails and I analyzed them, and I'm going to tell you what we found out. So this is fantastic. So this Bison customer, they basically wanted to know if it's worth contacting CEOs versus others. Because a lot of people, they try to skip CEOs and founders because they feel like that stuff doesn't work, right? And some of the stuff they found out is that actually the positive reply rate for the C-suite, especially for CEOs, but for the C-suite in general, it's 3 times higher than other positions, than directors or salespeople. So that was like a pleasant surprise to see when I saw his study. I realized that, you might get fewer overall responses from the C-suite, but the positive reply rate, it's there, right? Now, something interesting is that even though the reply rate is lower, it's not that much lower. So what they found out is that it's somewhat similar. It is lower for sure, but it's not like a massive difference. So it's not like half the total number of replies. And now, once again, we're talking about a data sample of 1 million contacts. So something that I also found interesting is they also analyze the positive versus negative and neutral type of replies. So I will say that the number of non-neutral replies is healthier with the C-level suite, and probably it has to do with the fact that they're decision makers, right? Like when you're talking to a non-decision maker, let's say a director or a head of something, they probably still have to check or get the approval from the C-suite, and that will explain why they are not able to get like a yes or a no. So when you're contacting the yes or level, you're more likely to on top of getting 3 times more positive replies, you're also more likely to get like straight no's rather than just neutral replies that you're not sure like if it's a yes or no, which is still better because that way you can like clean your databases and such. And for those who think like, well, maybe this study was conducted with like only small companies, right? But actually these guys, they conducted the study across different company sizes. So what we're seeing here is, actually here's the table. They actually analyze also on company size, how like basically contacting the C-suite performs, right? So I mean, we all know this, but I think it's good to have it in form of data. And the smaller the company, the higher the reply rate for the C-suite, and the difference can be massive. So for all of you out there, I think you're kind of safe to contact the C-suite up to 50 employees. And then we see a big dip when you are contacting, I would say, past I would say like past 200 employees, like the dip starts to happen. And then when it's like 10,000 plus, don't even try, pretty much. So yeah, I would say like these are the kind of studies that I love to see in the community, in the Bison community. We have some other stuff out there.
Can you share that link in the chat, by the way?
Yes, I'll share in the chat. It's very long. And one thing I like about Ryan is that he's always doing studies like this. So there you go. There.
So, question from the chat: where are you seeing the most alpha in cold email these days?
But can you be more specific with that?
I think this term alpha is getting bandied around quite a bit, but I think we're probably referencing like where's the most competitive edge? Like what are the things that the people who are seeing the most success doing that, is separating the wheat from the chaff, right?
Right.
The top level from the mid level.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Look, I think it's just offer. When we look at the top operators, like they don't spend so much time trying to over optimize their campaigns. Like sure, they A/B test a lot, like let's say 5 variants, 10 variants, and so on. They will just clay, they will like enrich data and all of that. But I think primarily like they will try to, make sure that the offer is just easy to sell. So I wouldn't overthink it. And I've seen like some very interesting processes. So for example, when I was meeting with Eric Novoslavsky in San Fran when we were at the Play conference, we were talking about it, and he has built like a fantastic process where he just sends campaigns for free for people. Like he just sends a campaign for free up to like, I can't remember the exact amount, but let's say 200 people. So it's like, it costs him almost nothing. And he uses generic email accounts. And what he does with that is he wants to check if like a campaign will perform. So he just sends them like a quick form, they fill the form, and then he sends the campaign. I think it's a form, I'm not sure, but basically he just has a very lean process to just sending a campaign very easily for someone. And then based on the reply rate, he, tries to sell them their services. And that approach basically helps him to focus on anybody who has like, let's say more than 2% reply rate. It's going to be easy for me to scale, right? So I would say that's the first thing. It sounds kind of obvious, but we kind of forget about it. And I think if you build like a very lean system to filter people out and like very easily prove that their offer might work, whether, I don't know, maybe you can have like a quick form and then like a ChatGPT agent that can double check like how much demand can be for like X industry and like X offer and so on. Maybe you don't even need to send the campaign and you can just automate the whole process, and you can get like a guess on how much demand there can be for that, right? So I would say it's that's one thing. Usually the kind of people that we have on Bison, like they have been doing cold email for like 2-3 years. So they've been doing it for a while. They already use other sequencers. They want kind of the step up. They want to bulletproof themselves. And what we see that they're doing is they diversify their infra. So they get different infrastructure. They don't go cheap on data ever. So they usually like try to get like good data sources, whether it's like Clay, just different data sources, but they don't just go and scrape Apollo and that's the only source of data for all of their campaigns, right? Like they have clients that have a high ticket that can justify like, spending a bit more on data, right? They also don't go cheap on email verification. So we have seen like some cases where there's some email verifiers like Rion. Rion is like super cheap. It's like fantastic from a cost perspective. And, I think they have a lifetime deal and all of that. But the problem is that every now and then, and this happens with all email verifiers, okay, don't get me wrong. But email verifiers, they basically can burn their IPs. And once they burn their IP, the accuracy kind of dips. And with Rion, we've seen it happens a little bit more often than usual. They will fix it, of course. But with some more verifiers, it's very, very noticeable, right? So you don't have like those like false positives or fluctuations or like, bounce rates skyrocketing all of a sudden from one day to another. Like I think there is one guy in the community called Jaime, and he was saying the other day that he was using Rion once and they had like one of those fluctuations where their IPs got burned. So they just, flagged like a bunch of emails as valid, but they were invalid actually. And he blasted them all and he burned his whole infrastructure because his bounce rate went to the roof. And yeah, basically he had to buy all his accounts from scratch. So that kind of stuff can happen, right? So that's why like you don't want to go like too cheap on like your infrastructure, your verification, your data, and especially with infrastructure. I think like proof of it right now is like the whole panel thingy like getting shut down. It's fantastic from a cost perspective, but you don't want to go all in panels, right? Like maybe like, I don't know, 50% panels back in the day, at least. Like now I think it's very risky. So yeah, I will say that those are like some of the things that like the top 10% operators are doing. It's not that much different of what like all of you guys are doing, but I will say like the step up, like what these people are doing is also they're super careful with like the small details. So for example, something we do at Bison is, like you said, we're very selective on who can join a warm-up pool, like extremely selective. And we kind of see it as like when your parents will tell you don't hang out with those kids, they can be a bad influence type of thing. Like they're doing like, like illegal stuff, like don't hang out with them, right? And so it's kind of a domino effect where if somebody brings really bad quality SMTP accounts and then they send like a crypto offer, they can get their accounts burned or blacklisted, and then your accounts will get like you'll end up warming up their accounts, right? So you don't want to get like blacklisted as well. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is that at Bison, we kind of create like a mini sequencer for every client. So every client has their own server, their own IPs, their own Google credential and all of that. So every client is completely isolated. So if Google at some point was like to shut down like sequencers as a whole, for Bison, they will have to go after every individual client because every client is pretty much isolated. So it just makes it harder for them. So yeah, those are some of the things that our clients are doing so far.
I'm going to rattle off a couple questions. So Ilya said, hey, what are some creative ways Bison customers are converting positive replies into booked meetings? Been seeing a decline in conversion rate over the past 90 to 120 days. Interactive sales assets, landing pages, cold calling, etc. have been ideas that have been thrown around previously. Curious to hear what you're doing to move the needle. I'll speak from my experience here, Ilya. We've also seen that big decline. And this kind of goes to everyone. We're layering in a lot of cold calling and warm calling, and that's becoming a critical piece of conversion for us. So that's like one way. It's not always the easiest. If you've got questions about cold calling, Kai right here is a great person to ask. Sorry, Kai, to put you on the spot, but like we are starting to layer that in. It's becoming incredibly important that we're picking up and calling. Even we use RevReply. We've got a team of people that answer, and then we've got warm callers picking up the phone. We also have started to make sure that every one of our clients, when we get these calls on the calendar, that their Calendly is built out in a way that sends a lot more kind of value before the call, so people actually show up to the call, because that was one of the big drop-offs that we had. So they book on Calendly, it goes to a custom landing page that provides value. We send, a text follow-up or a text notification, another email in between that offers some value. So people actually show up to the calls, because that's a big drop-off for clients. So something to keep in mind. Aaron Connolly said, if the industry you're targeting is heavily Microsoft Outlook, how would you structure scaling up a campaign? This is just my opinion on a lot of Microsoft infrastructure right now. That's different than delivering to Microsoft. They're still Google delivers best to Microsoft. But one thing we're doing when sending and trying to get to Microsoft is we keep our messages really, really short. Just a little bit of practical advice. Like I think our messages going out of Microsoft and landing in Microsoft, we're trying to get like 1 sentence emails whenever possible. Any advice on that though, Felipe, from your end?
Yeah, no, I think it's like, take back to the fundamentals. Like you use like a very good verifier. You're just very likely to get flag as spam on Microsoft. So what we're seeing is that people that they change their copy very often. They use like fresh email accounts, especially very warm up domains. So I will say like if you use like very warm up domains, with very warm up domains, I mean like 3 to 6 months old, you're very careful with the copy, with the data, with the verification, with the volumes as well. So everything you're currently doing it, like do it like 3 times stricter. You are probably more likely to get replies from Microsoft. I personally, like I send campaigns for Bison. So probably a lot of you guys are receiving some of my cold emails lately. And I'm inboxing on Microsoft. I'm getting like a bunch of replies from Microsoft. But for those, what I do is I put them on a separate campaign, and then I just treat them completely different. Like where my volume is much lower, where the copy I'm like constantly spinning it out, where I'm checking the blacklist. I've noticed that the blacklist, they are like a strong trigger for Microsoft. Like as soon as you're blacklisted on Spamhaus or Subreddit, like you're done, you're cooked. Yeah, I would say like just fundamentals, but just stricter, pretty much.
Awesome. Why don't you, if we can take a few more questions, I may have to jump off and Felipe may have you just end the session. But do you want to run through a few questions?
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's see. From Nick Warren, is the long-term vision purely performance and deliverability, or do you see Bison becoming part of a broader trust or identity layer for email traffic? It's a good question. I mean, it's hard to tell. Like, we're just thinking of just deliverability for now because that's like our bread and butter and what people are paying us money for. Like, they just want a platform that is very stable, that it just doesn't bug when they use the API and such, that it can land on the inbox. So that's what we're focusing on, because right now everyone is like trying to build like jack of all trades, master of none. They're trying to like build like a database infrastructure, decent that blender toaster all in one sequencer. Like we just want to like be excellent at one thing, because it's impossible to be excellent at everything. So yeah, that's basically going to be our focus moving forward. It's very tempting though, because there is revenue everywhere else, but yeah, we are thinking more long term.
Felipe, I'm gonna have you answer questions and then sign off. Cool. Thanks everyone. Good. See y'all next week.
Yes, yeah. All right. So from Smith Mulani, if we want to reach out to C-suite from 500 to 1,000 employees, you think mixing up email with LinkedIn will help or not? I'm asking because we have clients in the investment banking and M&A space. Yeah, that's a good question. I will say that if the offer is really good, like you might still give it a try with like larger companies, toward the C-suite. At the end of the day, like offer is still king. So if you have like a really solid offer, I will say give it a try. I mean, like, and see how your reply rates perform. If obviously your reply rates are not there and you're like under 1% reply rates, like, yeah, you might need to try like LinkedIn or even cold calling. But yeah, I mean, and even you can like go as far as like combine all channels, right? You can send them a cold email and then later on send them a LinkedIn invite and be like, hey, I sent you an email about this, and then give them like a call, like, hey, I send you an invite and a cold email about this, right? So I think like the more present you can be, the better. At the end of the day, like with marketing, it's all about like reminding them that you exist. Yeah. Let's see. From Zachary, how do you feel about off-market data sources being the next meta? It's hard to tell. Like the thing with data is that, everybody's promising, like, everyone is saying their data is the best. So it all comes down to just testing different data sources. It also has to do with your business, right? Like maybe you have some compliance there and you need to make sure that you get like, data that is like strongly compliant, SOC2, and whatnot. So yeah, I would say it can really depend, but yeah, that's what Clay's for, right? It's very easy to like test different data providers. From Lazar, when you talk about fingerprinting, how fast does it happen, and does the response rate dictate the speed of it happening? Yes, the response rate I think is the best indicator for you getting fingerprinted. Obviously, you have like some factors in there, like for example, let's say, I don't know, like Thanksgiving, Christmas and whatnot, like, right, where you will have like a natural dip in terms of reply rates. But if you are seeing a consistent dip in reply rates compared to like previous periods, like, yeah, then most likely you need to make some changes. It might not necessarily be just fingerprint, right? Like it could be other factors. Like if you have issues with reply rates, I wouldn't like you to just feel like, oh, it's fingerprinted because, you guys were speaking about it. It could be like the reputation from your domains, the data you're using, and so on and so on. So obviously, like, always run through the whole checklist for deliverability. And they don't know like what the checklist is. I mean, probably a lot of but like usually it's like check like inbox placement test different copies to see if your copy got fingerprinted. Inbox placement test obviously helps you to check if your accounts are inboxing or not. Also, you can use some tools like Glockapps or Email Guard, for example, to check if you are on some spam lists as well. You can check as well your spam house score with Email Guard and so on. Also, check the bounce notifications. Sometimes when you're not inboxing, you can see if you're maybe bouncing because you're blocked. Usually, like, you get like a message that is very specific when you get blocked. It usually says just message blocked. Or maybe you're just bouncing and your email verifier is failing you, right? So it's always good to like, sometimes what I do is I take the whole list of bounces and I re-verify it with something like Bounce Ban is a really good one. They're very expensive though, but they do catch-all verification and so on. So they're just pretty good as a verifier. Never Bounce is actually pretty good as well, like also more expensive, but I usually use them as backup when I need to like double check lists that are bouncing. And I just want to make sure that my verifier is not failing me, right? I also will check my domains. So on Spamhaus, you can get a score on your domain reputation, as some of you know. I will use a bunch of, I always have domains that are warming up just as backup. So I will like switch them up and see if using a fresh set of domains might change things for me. And same with infrastructure. Like, I do a mix of, Google Outlook and SMTPs, and then I see if there is a specific provider that is giving me more results than the other, in case, like, let's say the IP for one of those providers just got, fingerprinted or blacklisted. And then, some recommendations like what Taylor was doing, which is like changing the whole first name and last name. So for example, let's say he's sending all his campaigns as like Taylor.Harren at, I forgot the name of his company, but like agencyx.com, whatever. And then you change it entirely to like John Smith, and your email can be like john.smith at agencyx.com. So you change the entire first name and last name and see if that makes any change. Maybe your first and last name got also fingerprinted. It's not so likely to happen, but anything is possible when it comes to deliverability. And yeah, it just makes sense. Let's see. Matt says, buddy, once I changed my subject line from quick question to a personalized one, I got a 10x increase. I literally went from 0.5 to 5%, not counting automatic ones, but it was for very short, like 5% of them, blah, blah, blah. Then it got broken. This one is a single experience for me. So yeah, I mean, yeah, makes sense. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I love seeing people like sharing like also like that it just works. Let's see. I think we can mute Troy. Yeah, there you go. Muted. If anybody wants to ask any questions, you can mute yourself as well. Maybe we can make it like more, we can have like a conversation here as well. I don't just need to read these questions here. So yeah, feel free to ask. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself as well.
I have a quick question. So
go for it.
One of obviously ML Bison looks like I'm on my wife's Zoom. That's why it says Lily. Yeah. One of the biggest friction points for me to onboard with Bison is just price point. Are you guys planning on reducing price point to offer at least offer a part or features of the sequencer to wider areas of the market beyond larger agencies? Or are you pretty much staying in your lane, servicing agencies at your current price point? Just curious about trajectory.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would love to tell you yes, but in all transparency, the costs we have are very high. So every client that we set up, so we have a call with every single client, and after that, we also have an onboarding call with every client. We also build every server for every client manually. So we take 1 to 3 days to set up every client. So we kind of build like a mini sequencer in their own server for every customer, right? So that's just, yeah, it's very expensive. And so, yeah, that's the reason why actually in the first month, we barely make money. We don't charge for setups or anything. We just absorb all the costs and we cross fingers that they stay for longer. So that way, we recover the investment that we make there, which is why we're also selective on the people we're onboarding, because we don't want to be onboarding people that we're going to be spending resources on. And then, we're just not making money there. So yeah, that's the reason why we just can't drop prices, because our approach is it's the way I like to describe it is like homemade bread. It's like we're taking the best wheat we can and the best ingredients, and we just take the dough with our own hands and we roll it with our own hands and all of that. Whereas the mass sequencers, what they can do is they have this industrial machinery and they just buy flour in bulk, and they just package it and sell it to you at the supermarket, right? So it's a different type of product. It's a different approach. Now there is a sequencer that I'm starting to like lately. It's called PlusBuy. Well, some of you probably heard about them, but they have a very clean warm up pool. I think they're very they are very careful with the warm up pool. So you if you're looking for sort of a good balance between okay, I don't want a mass sequencer, a sequencer with 50,000 customers and warm-up pools are, that everyone is there, and I want a cleaner warm-up pool. I think PlusBuy would be a good one, and the price point is pretty low. So
thanks for your feedback on that. Yeah, I'm totally looking to get to Bison when I scale out my, board of business here. But yeah, appreciate your feedback on that.
Yeah, no, happy to help. Anybody else wants to ask questions? I think it makes it more fun and engaging when we're talking live. So otherwise, it feels like a monologue. But yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions. I'll be reading some here in the meantime, but at least for the next 10 minutes, because then I have a call. But yeah, so for Matt here, do you believe it's no longer a rule to warm up at least for 2 weeks? Should I warm up longer? Look, the longer the better. It's very simple. You just have to build reputation with your email accounts and with your domains mainly, because the domain register, spam house, and all of that, they're just trying to make sure that people don't spam and they don't the last thing they want is for someone to use a fresh domain and then send like phishing emails, like asking you for crypto and all of that because they saw naughty photos about yourself or whatever somewhere. They're trying to prevent scam emails and phishing emails. And so the only way to do that is by just making sure that people do not send a really high volume of emails very quickly. So it's not like they're against us, like for sending outbound, they're just against spam or phishing emails effectively. So you just have to build reputation, and the longer you build it, the better, right? So the safer it's going to be for them, for people, for the 70, 80-year-olds, that they fall very easily for phishing emails and whatnot. Connor, as you have a question, go for it.
What's up, Felipe? First off, appreciate the content you shared today. Just was curious on your thoughts on top-level domains and deliverability. Like ideally, .coms are the best, but was curious on your thoughts on .cos, .infos, .xyzs, just to really see, like from your point of view, if it makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it does make a difference, and the data is there, right? I like to speak from a data perspective because it's full of gurus and everyone is saying like, yeah, I think, I feel like, and I like speaking from a data perspective. So if you go to Spamhaus, or if you Google right now like ranking Spamhaus domains, they basically have ranked the domains that have been abused the most. So there's some domains. I think like the XYC is a good example. I think XYZ. But there are some domains that are very cheap to buy, like they cost like, I don't know, $1. And they're usually used by spammers or scammers. And those are more likely to be flagged as spam. So they have like a lower score on Spamhaus. So, I wouldn't risk it with those. So yeah, I think it's just safe to use like .com, .co, .net. They're always like somewhat safe domains. They're also more expensive for like a scammer to like buy a bunch of those in bulk. And yeah, I would say like just look at the ranking that Spamhaus has on domains. If you ever like are curious, like, oh, should I buy this domain or not? They have all the data there. But as always, like don't believe the gurus, like experiment yourself. Maybe like out of curiosity, you can buy like 1 or 2 domains that they're very cheap and you're curious about it, and just create some accounts and some cold emails, see how they perform, run some inbox placement tests, and who knows, maybe your offer is solid and it just makes no difference.
Right on. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Ryan is saying, can we see some actual messaging that goes out? I don't know what you're referring. I mean, what you're talking about there, but I don't know. I can show you some of my campaigns if you want to see. We show you. So yeah, these are some of the outbound campaigns I'm sending recently because I like to practice what I preach. And let me show you more specifically about, for example, this is a campaign I literally started sending recently. And the stats that I'm getting for this campaign, so actually it was at around 6% reply rate, but then I made a mistake and I used a list of like 1,000 people that I didn't clean properly, and my reply rates dipped. But I was like very proudly like holding a 6% reply rate, and then somewhere around like a 58% positive reply rate. I made a LinkedIn post about it, and yeah, I actually have more replies than what I can manage. Okay, let's see, last 30 days. Yeah, there you go. I have like 110 people that say yes, and I haven't gotten back to them. I think I only responded to 50 so far. So I'm really sorry if if you receive my email and I haven't replied. It's just like, well, you probably saw my calendar just now, so it's just packed. But yeah, what I'm sending is pretty straightforward. So let me show you. I'm just trying to deliver value here. So I'm actually targeting you guys. I'm targeting agencies, right? And the first thing that I'm doing here is I'm segmenting the database as much as I can, making sure that I put these on Clay, for example. Let me show you my table. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm making sure that I check every website to confirm that they are actually agencies, right? So I scrape their website, I check if they're actually agencies or not, and then Clay tells me, checks the website and says, yes, these guys are agencies, or they're sending cold emails in any way or form, right? So that's the first thing I'm doing. So I'm segmenting people very well. And then I put them here. And I'm talking about something that might be relevant for somebody sending outbound, which is deliverability. So I literally say email deliverability study. Then my copy obviously is a spin text. And I'm going to change the copy, of course, because I don't want it to get fingerprinted after a few thousand emails. And it looks something like this. Okay, I don't know why I can't see the bottom of this. I think it's because of Zoom. Let me see. Zoom is preventing me from seeing that. Let me show you. Yeah, maybe I can just show you my inbox. Why not? Let me see. I want to show you the actual email so you see how it looks like. All right, here we go. All right, so this is how the actual email looks like. I'm keeping it very short and sweet. Basically, it's like, hi, first name, like a big go-to-market expert conducted a detailed study on cold email sequencers and deliverability. In the data, his team saw about twice as many responses using email Bison. Your current sequencer is likely included. Do you want the study? Short and sweet, simple. And I'm not asking them for their time. As you all know, like people don't have time to like meet or whatever, so I'm starting a conversation here. And the amount of people that have responded, like they want the study and they also like want to know more about Bison, it's incredible because I'm soft pitching Bison here, right? I'm telling them like, well, Bison in the study is like getting these like many results and blah, 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 blah. So that definitely helps building trust with people, right? So all in all, like I'm not really reinventing the wheel here. I'm just like keeping it short and sweet, value driven, building trust with people. So yeah, those are for that person who asked for my campaigns or my copy. That's what I'm sending. And I'm getting like close to 6% reply rate and 55, 57% positive reply rate on that. Smith is asking, are you guys selling merch? I like the hat. Yeah, we give it to some customers. Yeah, you may get it. And when I was at the Clay conference, I was, giving away some hats as well. So in the next conference, I can give you one as well. Let's see.
The question.
Go for it.
Yeah, thanks for hosting this and giving a lot of value, of course. I have a quick question about like running a campaign. Like if you want to run a very quick campaign for a client just to see how it works or just test out the offer. Have you noticed in your own data that using a domain that is not related to the company's name has an effect on the reply rate? So for instance, if one company is called Alphabet and your company is called Google, maybe that's a bad example, but these are like totally different names. Do you see like a very different reply rate to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't, but I think it's always good to be cautious. So what we have noticed is that large enterprises, that they have like a very solid reputation. And we have some of those at Bison, right? We have some companies that they have like hundreds of, they're like single companies, like multi-million-dollar companies, and they have a very strong reputation, and they're willing to invest more into deliverability and all of that. So we don't just have agencies. We actually have like companies that they have like teams of SDRs and all of that, and they have a GTM expert like managing the campaigns for the SDRs, thankfully, because SDRs will just blast emails and so on. And so those guys, they do care a lot about the reputation, and they have said that when they have tried using alternative domains and people receive those emails, they feel like it can be a little bit scammy, like the recipient, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like imagine right now you receive an email from like meetmicrosoft.com. You're gonna be a little bit like, is this really Microsoft? Like, why wouldn't Microsoft send it from like their main domain, right? So I think that can happen on like a large consolidated enterprise. But if you are medium to small size company and you use an alternative domain, I think you'll be fine because nobody knows your domain. So they're going to be like, it's likely just, it's just, there is like this psychological effect where you just don't care at that point, right? Like, I think it's the equivalent of like, let's say right now somebody starts making like these Bison hats. Like let's say they somehow like start selling them on Temu or AliExpress or whatever. I think people wouldn't care whether you buy the original Bison hat or you buy it on Temu or AliExpress, because this hat is like, it's not like a Nike hat or like an Adidas hat or like, so I don't know, like, it's not like a consolidated like hat where the branding is very important. So I think that only happens when you have a very consolidated company, right? Now, I haven't conducted the study myself, so I cannot like confirm that's the case, because again, I'm completely against people claiming facts without data. For me, data is very important, and we cannot have a debate where we don't have data that proves something, right? So this is like my perspective of things. But it would be cool to see at some point some data. I might do it myself, who knows? But yeah, I think one approach, and Anthony from Mission Inbox, he was talking a while about it, that he conducted a study. It would be cool to have him on one of these sessions to talk about it, though, where he was comparing the use of subdomains. So 5 to 7 years ago, I tried using subdomains and it kind of worked, but then they started dipping. And I think it's because people were abusing subdomains for sending like spam and like phishing emails and so on. So it wasn't working anymore, right? But recently, subdomains are working. It seems that as long as your offer is legitimate and you're not trying to like scam people, or your reply rates are decent, you can use a subdomain without affecting the main domain. But if your reply rates are terrible and your offer is very scammy, you will likely burn the main domain by using subdomains. That means, Felipe at sending.emailbison.com. That's a subdomain, right? Rather than an alternative domain. So I would say for a large enterprise where you are very consolidated and your offer is good and you're doing very good segmenting and targeting, it might be an interesting test to use subdomains. And like I said, Anthony from Mission Inbox might be able to talk more about it, but what he was showing me, I think it looked very promising. Well, guys, I have another call now. It was pleasure having you all here. Thank you so much for your questions and everything. And yeah, hopefully we'll see each other in the community. And don't forget to attend the next webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.